What's going on, guys? And welcome to War Cry Podcast Live. Man, I'm going through it right now, guys. Going through it. Power went out here in, I guess, West Oklahoma City. I don't know what's going on, but it's roasting in my house, and so I still thought I'd jump on here and still make sure y'all was taken care of, making sure y'all got spooked out tonight. But I appreciate if you guys listen to this on the back end later on. Um, Tonight we're going to be, we're not going to go very long. I like to keep it. What is it? The phrase that's ongoing with the podcast is I'm not here for a good time, I'm here for a long time, or is it opposite? Anyways, doesn't matter. But so I we got an episode dropping tonight at midnight. Um, pretty excited about that one. I think this one's gonna. I think it's gonna take off. I think this is the one that y'all have not thought about, and no one's really thought about. But the episode is going to be episode 35, and it's going to be called "Big Cats in Caves." And on this episode that I'm talking about, that's dropping tonight, will be basically about Black Panthers in Oklahoma and over in America, and then also overseas in the UK. Um, and then I also talk about the cave systems and different things that could people going missing and things like that. And so I got a few things that are lined up, especially with that episode. Um, Man, I was talking to some people. What was this? I guess it was probably Wednesday, and man, I'll tell you what. I heard one of the creepiest sleep paralysis stories I've probably ever heard, and it's creepy because I can see it in my head, and I'm gonna tell it to you right now, live on YouTube. So this happened out in West Texas. This story was told to me literally this week, and they're staying out in this ranch, um, and there's multiple houses on this ranch, and there's one house that's designated as the pink house because of the matriarch, the mother who lived there. She died there too as well, but as she was in the dying process, she got into like some occult kind of weird, I don't know how to say it, kind of not demons and angels and stuff. And she got real thick into that. And basically these guys are staying there, and one of the guys turned over and was, or I guess was sleeping there, and then turned over one night and saw this devil looking thing basically scratching the back of this other guy. And in the morning time, I guess when he saw that, he tried to like make himself wake up, but then he kind of eventually rolled back over and got to where it went away. And the next morning, there was scratches on this dude's back, or like places where you could see someone's nails. And the way they described it was like that old school Red Devil type. And I was like, man, oh man, that's pretty good. And I was like, golly, I'm gonna have to share that. But like I said, that was out of West Texas, and there's all these. I think that's one thing people get kind of mixed up on is that certain people have certain things, and certain things have like everybody has their own thing. And one thing that is the kind of crazy is that when he saw that, to me, I think of my near, like, kind of a shadow person. And I don't know if mine was sleep paralysis. And eventually, I'm going to tell that story. And it's a very, very long story that involves a lot of weird stuff. And that's one thing about the podcast that I'm going to get to eventually is going to be telling my young people stories, like when I was young. Um, when I was a young guy on Facebook, or I guess really on Facebook today, I told a story. in a group. I think it's called Oklahoma, the Indian Territory, Sasquatch, things like that, aliens. And I tell a story about when me and this Hispanic kid we had beef, like we had real beef, and I was always mad at this kid. He's always doing something. He got real jealous one time, and we had this volleyball net. It was real rickety. I ain't gonna lie, but it's pretty it's pretty fun. But he snapped the poles on it. Oh my god! And I knew it was him. Boy, go to blows over that. And but he would mess around a lot at night. Like his parents let him do anything, and he would wild out at night. He would just be going around knocking on people's doors and banging on windows and just doing creepy stuff. And he eventually, you know, got to our house and he told my little brother. He said, "Hey, I saw something at y'all's house." And so my brother called me over there, and I was like, "What's going on?" And I'm thinking he's up to doing something again, and come to find out, there was a shadow or a man standing on top of our roof, and he had no face, and he was just standing there. And this kid looked up and saw it, and he's like, "What is that? What's going on with that, man?" But we used to have things like that all the time mess with us, but on this, like I said, on this live, like I said, this is the first one. I'm gonna try to go live at least twice a week. We may do a Sunday before an episode drops, and we may do, who knows? We may do one on a random Wednesday or how that shakes out. But the kind of topic of this live is Bigfoot and medicine, and we're revisiting that first or that second episode. I call it the first one because it's the first one that I started editing. The very first one. I don't think many people even heard it because I couldn't get it on multiple platforms, and I was having issues. But I posted the clip from Bigfootville on Facebook, and one thing about I kind of forgot, and when I was talking about the things that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you want to call it, what they do. And there's a certain type of one that is kind of a Bigfoot that people call him Tall Man, but I'm not gonna. I almost said the name just now, but it's in Creek or I guess Seminole Creek, whatever but Creek is what I know it in, and but it's makes you forget. And I had told a story on Bigfoot Crossroads about my dad's best friend who was driving. If you guys know, when you're driving into Tahlequah, there's the casino now, but before it used to be pasture. And on the other side was like a golf course. And there was one road that split up that pasture where the casino is now, and with the kind of a golf course slash hill type. But there was one road that ran up there. I don't know, it may still be there. And he one night was driving, and he thought he saw something on the side of the road. He looked up and he's like, "Man, what is that?" And he ended up passing by it. And he looked in his rear view, and it was hairy, and it was tall. All he could see is, about the forearms, and he really, couldn't see much, but he saw it was hairy, real hairy. And he looked, but like he forgot about it for a long time. And I had mentioned it kind of briefly to my dad, and then I had my dad mentioned it to him, and I mentioned it to him, and I said, "Man, you remember that story you told a long time ago?" He goes, "Man, I can't, man." And then one day it just dawned on him. He's like, "Yeah, I remember." But that's the one that they talk about. It it makes you forget, and I think that's what he saw that night. And there's different spiritual aspects of Sasquatch and Bigfoot, and I think he does things that we can't explain. And I know Cherokees, we call it secret tribe, of people, and I fully believe that they know things beyond what we can interpret. And it's not everyone, like not every Indian's a medicine man, and not every medicine man is an Indian. and not every Bigfoot knows these things. I think it's the same way. I think it's that's how it is. Is there's only a certain few of them that know, and it's passed down, and they're like our elders, or the people that practice those things and heal people, and they do those things for them. And I think that's the same way with them. I look at them as a set of, almost like a set of people. And I know people go out there all the time and they're like, man, we got to kill, we got to get a body. We got to make sure these things are real. At the same time, we look at it from a point of view of, as a human being or something as, that's got, it's more than an animal. And I know that there's a lot of people in the Bigfoot community that believe it is an animal, and which is fine, but at the same time, we don't know exactly what it is, but that's just kind of what I believe. What do you guys believe? Let me know in the chat. I got some people in here. I had a few people in here in the chat. Go ahead and put down what you believe it is. Is it a primate? Is it another set of man? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd like to, or in the chat. I'd like to see what y'all think. But yeah, but they always talk about sometimes too that they're underground, and this is one thing we'll talk about with the cave system on this next episode, episode 35 that's coming up tonight at midnight. And if you're hearing this on the replay, it's Monday, the 21st or whatever. But we talk about a little bit of that, and a lot of older elders believe that they came from underground and they live underground. We think about those giants that they found in Kandahar, the giant that they found in Kandahar, or however the story goes. I feel like there's 19 million stories about that. Those things were underground. They were in caves. We look at the Paiutes. They basically had cornered a group of giants that were, in caves. And I always kind of wonder what's in there, because we don't know. It's at the end of the day, we can play hypothetical. We can be straight up about it. But I believe that they do. They are underground. I know a lot of people think that they take the high ground too. Is that they're on ridges and they have these what do they call them, centurions that watch. They just basically just keep track and of where everything's at. And so I don't know. Like I said, I want to know in the chat what you guys believe, because I think it's real interesting. But another thing I talked about on that episode, and I guess I'll preface this. One of my favorite scenes, and I think I mentioned this in the on the episode 2, Bigfoot and Medicine. Go back and listen to it. Was my favorite part is when they took Tim Harjo out, and they literally find a Bigfoot within that time that they were there. They found it one day, and you could see something kind of walking on the ridge. And it was just kind of moving real slow, but I thought that was real cool. But like I said, one of my favorite scenes is when he's like, stink, smell that, stink. On one of the episodes that I did, I think it was for my dad. I put that in there vaguely, just real quietly, just to see if anyone caught it. So if you caught it, let me know. But yeah, going back to that episode and revisiting that episode, another thing that I've heard, and just kind of in the community when it comes to that, is that they can speak telepathically to people, and I never really quite understood that. I've seen multiple people, say that they had encounters. Now, I don't know. Some people be crazy. I really don't know about that, but I think somebody in the chat here. I think they could be that they travel between dimensions. This is kind of an interesting theory that kind of made me think. Martin Groves, he had a story that I heard on Confessionals podcast with Tony Merkel, and he had talked about that there was these dogmen coming after him and his buddy, and the story is really long, but basically that he could see off on the kind of the ridge, or the kind of the almost like like a general or a commander sitting back and watching. It looked like they were kind of guiding these dogmen. And that kind of made me think, and the theory that I have kind of read on is that these Bigfoot are basically kind of the owner or the pet or like the dogmen are pets to these Bigfoot, and they raise them. I just find that really interesting. That could be a possibility. Just based off that story. I have heard stories, and I have seen. I've heard multiple in the community that people talking about that they have went at it, which doesn't surprise me at all. And I go lie that Omar gonna take it down. He gonna win. He gonna beat that wolf that dog man. But I get stories about this all from time to time, and a story that always and I told a story like I said on this next episode. I don't want to ruin nothing for y'all, man. It's hard. It's really really hard to not ruin anything for y'all. But on episode 35, but I tell a story about an ex girlfriend of mine who had some creatures on her property, and I'll say. She lived up in kind of north of Tahlequah, kind of headed towards Briggs. If y'all know where Briggs, America is, kind of headed out that way, kind of next to the river. And also brings to mind a story that I had heard kind of growing up. My dad, he had told me a story or he had kind of mentioned that he believes that they go in and out of Murrell Park, possibly, and that he had heard or something real heavy going by the house. And Murrell Park is real creepy out there. And eventually, like, I'll tell some stories about my time there. And I have a really long story that was on Unsolved. Oh, it's not Unsolved, but Spirit Talkers. Um, on one of the first episodes I was on. And shout out to those guys. New episodes are dropping soon for Spirit Talkers. Man, I just haven't been able to get over there. I got too much going on, and I know people. I've had some people ask about it, like, man, what are you abandoning us? Like, what you doing, man? We ain't heard nothing from you on there. I said, well, I'm here, I'm around, but but that was kind of the belief that they kind of went in and out of that because there's a creek that runs through there, and they always kind of the ongoing thing is that they follow water. Um, another thing too that I think about when it comes to that medicine part of them is that people always talk about cloaking, and when you talk about cloaking, a lot of people think of Harry Potter. They think of that robe, that they put over, and he's just invisible cloak, or things like that. But I think of it more of like the Predator in a sense of, and it's not a technology. It's a technique. It's a I would say it's a medicine, but that's not the phrase I want to use. But they know, and they know how to make themselves disappear. There's an old story about Chito Harjo, who's part of the snakes back in Eufaula days, back in the old days, and he could when he was getting away from those soldiers and the prohibition police and all them, he disappeared, and people would never be able to find him. But he'd be right there, just right there, or he'd turn into a stump. And I think that's what they can do too. I think that they do those things to avoid us. And if you know, if you want to be found, you can be found. If you don't want to be found, you won't be found. And that's one thing that I was always taught. If you're looking for things, you're gonna find it. Or if you want to stay away from those things, they won't come near you. And so there's always things that about that medicine part for Sasquatch, for Bigfoot, that I was am very intrigued by. And I love it when I hear stories about Bigfoot kind of rocking with the drums at the grounds, or at the powwow, or stomp grounds. He's vibing out, like he's kind of swaying back and forth. And there was a story told at a live event that we did for Spirit Talkers back a year ago now, and he was staying on a reservation up north, and this guy, I'm not going to use his name because I ain't got his permission to say his name, but he had looked over, and the drum's going real strong, and he looked over and he could see that there was a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, kind of rocking out, kind of just swaying, like he was, kind of enjoying that beat, and kind of just walked away once it was over. And I always find that very interesting. Maybe because sometimes that drum has a healing effect. It really brings your spirit right, makes it right, and it makes you feel good about yourself, and makes you, I know I felt it when we was at Pouring Power. I was like, man, start start doing those dances. No, but I think that it affects them. You know, there's been multiple stories that I've heard. This is one out of Concho, and they saw one out there doing the same thing, kind of swaying with the beat, the drums, and I agree with Jessica in the chat. I couldn't imagine seeing that. I couldn't imagine looking over and it's like dang, you're looking over and see one of your relatives. No, dang, one of the hairy man, one of y'all's relatives is what it is. No, but I couldn't imagine seeing it either. And that's a great story. That's a great story when you talk about those them showing up at the grounds. And like I said, I think there's something to that. I think that they know. Another thing too is I heard a story one time that they're out there speaking Cherokee. It's just come from off the Cherokee Res, and it's an old story, but they speak Cherokee, and they maybe the ones that are there in that area, they know and they understand. Um, they understand that what's being said, and I found that real cool. That maybe, like I said, I mean, it's maybe like each territory too. Like they always talk about they always talk about. I guess each tribe has their own language or a semblance of their own language, and maybe that's the same thing as that each they know they have their own type of language, but I think that's real cool to know that they was out there speaking it and they could understand it. And one other thing too about the kind of the bad ones, the ones that make you forget. For a long time, tribes have been telling Europeans and white folks that you don't go to those areas because that's the devil's mountain. That's over here is the devil's cave, or the evil place. They always tell, and a lot of those times it's those ones that make you forget that are there, and they terrorize. You know, we don't ever know where those places are nowadays because we built cities on them and we built towns on those places. And a lot of those places that were talked about are still around, but they're not as prevalent in today's society and what we know. But I appreciate everybody that's in the chat. Let me know where you're from. If you're a quiet listener, let me know. Just I can see the chat rolling. Just let me know where you're from, and maybe I might have a story for you if you name a place that I know. Uh, if you're here in Oklahoma, I try to know as wide ranging as I humanly possible. Like I had on the last This Is Creepy, I had a lady from Garfield County reach out to me about her kind of Bigfoot story that she had, and it was stalking her and her cousin or her family member uh, on the train tracks as they were walking home one night, and that's in Garfield County. I appreciate people that share those stories with me because I like to keep them anonymous. I like to make it to where they're comfortable telling those stories because sometimes people, and that's one thing I get kind of like when I share my very broad, my very strong opinion about these things, and people look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, okay, see what I've seen. You don't understand because you don't know what you haven't seen. And I've always grown up with a kind of a fear of the unknown and unsure of how and what is behind in the dark. And I think that's a lot of people. But I'm looking to we're looking at okay. We got someone from OKC just ghosting the chat. I appreciate that. Just man, just haunting the place, huh? Dang, we got a real live ghost. We got someone from Norman. I like it. Yeah, hey, I appreciate everybody in the OKC Metro. Boomer Sooner all day. I know the season's coming up, and man, we need Brent Venables to do something. We need him to do something. I can't go another season like last season. Man, it was brutal. Had some Texas fans and Oklahoma State fans ragging. I was upset, man. Bigsby. Oh, I know Bigsby very well, very very well. There's a Oklahoma ghost story episode. I can't remember what episode that was, but I share about a facility that I worked at over the course of the summer, and there's some spooky things that happened over there. And I think that one's called Oklahoma Ghost Stories Part One. And we're going to work on Oklahoma Ghost Stories Part Two, or I am, because there's a lot out there. I think one of the other stories that I told on that was about my dad, and uh, he was out basically uh, out there doing his job, and one of the son came down and was like, What are you doing here? You're trespassing." He's like, "Hey man, I'm just here for this person." And the person goes, "Well, there ain't nobody live here." Well, come to find out, there had been a lady telling my dad to come in. Well, the lady had passed some time before that, and the guy runs in the house and thinking his mom was still alive. And that's a story that was over. That's on Oklahoma Ghost Stories Part One. But yeah, we're at about 27 minutes. I'm gonna go probably another 2 minutes. 2 minutes. If you ghost in the chat, let me know where you're from. And like I said, I always like to try to exit with a story. And I got a real short one here. But um, growing up on Cherokee Nation Res, and being a Res dog, we always used to do crazy stuff. And reservation dogs is kind of how I was grew up, you know. But we were running around a lot in kind of different streets and dirt roads. And one of the weirdest times in my life was the time when there was a weird guy that stayed down at the end of the trailer park where we stayed on. And he was weird. He was a very weird guy. And basically, there's a little kind of a younger guy who was crazy. He like this kid did anything. He said, "Hey, I bet you 2 nickels going at the guy's house," and he went in that guy's house. So we go down and tell his dad, and boy, his dad went down there. Come to find out, that guy was a registered sex offender that was, I guess, not registered, and they beat the brakes off that guy. I was like, man, that's crazy. You just never know, And with school starting back and people got school, we just, that's like one of my biggest fears in life is something happening to my two daughters. And so I always, always be a lookout. Eventually I'm going to talk about, the missing people, missing and murdered indigenous people and women and kids. I keep seeing, man, about a couple times a week, I see a missing poster of another child, indigenous child. And so those things are out there. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to the live stream, the first one. Um, you can go follow me on TikTok, Warcry Pod, Twitter, One Man Band 918, Instagram, Warcry Pod. If you got a story, email it to me. If you want to send it in like an audio, that's perfect because then I'll edit it, make you sound real cool, and do all those things. But that's at realwarcrypod@gmail.com. Add me on Facebook, You Hold a Tiger. Message me, let me know you listen to the pod. What's your favorite? And I'm always going to ask you what your favorite episode is. I keep you on your toes. But I appreciate y'all listening in, and I'll catch you on the next one.